1.5 million Canadians live with ADHD, but while the average diagnosis time for men is age 7, for women, it's 37. In fact, a recent study by the Centre for ADHD Awareness Canada says that 46% of women were likely misdiagnosed with another disorder before being correctly diagnosed with ADHD. Founder of CAD-DAC, Heidi Bernhardt, joins me now from Minton, Ontario, to help us better understand the relationship between ADHD and women and girls. Heidi, great to have you on the show this morning.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So the number of adult women newly diagnosed with ADHD nearly doubled from the year 2020 to 2022. So what are some of the reasons behind the recent increase?
Awareness on social media has actually increased the numbers significantly. We've also done a lot more training for physicians and medical professionals on how to identify ADHD in women because it does present differently.
Heidi, is this a case of understanding the symptoms of ADHD better for boys and having it be studied better in people who are male as opposed to women? Is that why we don't see the symptoms the same way for women or even recognize them?
Yeah, yes and no. Boys more often present with the hyperactivity included with the attention dysregulation. Girls less so, not never, but less often have the hyperactivity and the impulsivity. And that is what draws teachers and parents' attention to them at an earlier age. Girls tend to be more quiet, daydreamy, have more of the inattention symptoms more excessively, so they don't kind of throw up those red flags quickly.
Yeah, you can see that right away, how a child who's very hyperactive is like, hey, look at me right now. I can really see that there's something there. But if a child is really quiet and withdrawn, you're not necessarily drawn to them right away to say, hey, there might be something going on here.
Exactly. That's why we miss the girls in childhood. We know that in childhood, we've always diagnosed almost 3 times as many boys as girls, but in adult ADHD, it's more sort of 1-to-1. That means we're missing the girls and picking them up later in life. I mean, we are now, we weren't earlier, but we find that when women can recognize the symptoms and take themselves to the doctor and describe what they're feeling, experiencing, having difficulty with, this is when we get more diagnosis. The difficulty is also with what we call primarily inattentive type of ADHD. We see more in girls. When that's not diagnosed, we end up with a greater risk for anxiety and depression. So often those 2 disorders are diagnosed and the underlying ADHD is missed.
Heidi, you mentioned social media right at the beginning of our conversation. What role do you think that that type of education and awareness is playing in not only diagnosis, but also in reducing the stigma around ADHD in females?
Well, it's interesting. It's a double-edged sword. So for Kadak, who has been trying for many years, decades, to build awareness of ADHD and the impairments and get more assessment and diagnosis, it's a good story because the more people who are talking about how they experience ADHD and their difficulties, the more people recognize it in themselves. But a recent U of T study showed that about 50% of the information on social media about ADHD is inaccurate or actually wrong, right? So again, we have to be careful. People who are looking for information on ADHD have to make sure it comes from reliable sources.
Reliable sources like you, Heidi, and we're thankful for you coming on the show today to share this really important information.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.